Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my August wrap-up, which will include the last week of the month. I usually do a wrap-up every week, but since it's the end of, well, now it's the beginning of September, I thought I would just combine the last week of August along with the whole wrap-up of the month. So August was a great reading month for me, and I was able to read 65 books, and I had quite a few audiobooks for August. I think I was 24 in all, and the reason I had so many is I first of all found a series which was the Rick Riordan Percy Jackson series, and I only needed the first book in the series for a challenge that I was participating in August. But the first book was really adorable. I really liked it. It's middle grade, so I ended up reading the whole series or listening to the whole series via Audible. So let me give you my stats for August. I had read 22,559 pages, and that's more pages than I read last month, even though I read one less book, because I believe last month I read 22,400 pages according to my notes anyway. So it was a good reading month page-wise, and my yearly total pages so far is 172,834. I'm getting very close to the page count from 2019. My running total of books as of the making of this video is 495. As of the end of August was 495, because I did read a book yesterday, September 1st. And I will try to include screenshots wherever possible. So this wrap-up is on my blog, and if you click the blog link that I will put in the description below, you can actually see how I rated each book for August, and the images and the text for the ratings is all clickable to Goodreads. So let me give you some highlights for the month. For the first week, I read a lot of books. That was a good week. The first week I read 17 books actually. 11 of those were audio, 5 were ebooks, and 1 was a print book. And I've done weekly wrap-ups, so I'm just going to summarize this. The first highlight that I wanted to mention, I already did, was the Rick Riordan Percy Jackson series, starting with The Lightning Thief. I read all 5 books in the series, and they were The Sea of Monsters, The Titan's Curse, The Battle of the Labyrinth, and The Last Olympian. And I need a fantasy book for one of the or middle grade, one or the other, for one of the challenges that I'm doing in September. So I do have the first book of his next series, but I can't think of the name of it right now, so I will be reading Percy Jackson again in September. Now, I had 2 other audiobooks that I read that first week, and one was The Night Swim by Megan Golden, and the other one was His and Hers by Alice Feeney. The Night Swim was a really, really good book, because it was about a young man who's destined for the Olympics, but he had been accused of rape, and it's being reported on. I don't know what's in my back of my throat. It's being reported on in podcast fashion, and it's in trial. And then at the same time, something from the past comes up that is also investigated as far as women who have been assaulted and how the court process goes. Okay. Then I mentioned that I read His and Hers, and that was basically about a murder, but the book was written from his point of view and her point of view, but it also featured the voice of the killer. And those were both audiobooks that I got through NetGalley's audiobook program, so I really enjoyed both of those. I did listen to another audiobook in August, and that was Two for the Dough by Jenna Ivanovich. I really, after reading the first book, I knew that I was going to enjoy this series, so I just last night last week I got books 5 and 6 because I was waiting on book number 4. So last night I got book 4, so I will get 3 of those read in September. And then I read a couple, just one J.D. Robb. No, I did read 2 J.D. Robb books that first week. And that was, I can't see my notes, but I'm pretty sure it was Brotherhood and Death. I have to take my glasses off for a minute. I'm sorry. Wonderment and Death and Brotherhood and Death. I read those the first week, and it's hard to remember which 2 I read that week because I did read more during the month of August. And those were the highlights of the week. A couple of other books I read were parts of series, and they were good. I read a book by Philip Margolin that was good. So if you follow my blog, or if you follow my weekly videos that I've made on this channel, you might hear more highlights. So I'll leave that alone for week number 1. And then if we move on to week number 2, it was yet another good week. Still another 18 books read. This time it was less audio and more ebooks because it was 6 audio books and 12 ebooks. And what stood out to me in that week was 2 books by Robert Povey, which was City of Windows and Under Pressure. Now I have the hardbound, and it's in my living room, book of Under Pressure for review, but I wanted to read the first one, City of Windows, first because it's a series, and I'm a series fanatic. So if I find a book that I'm going to be reviewing, I will go and look for all the other books in the series. So what I like about that is the main character is a former FBI agent who was injured in a blast, and he has several prosthetics, a prosthetic arm, a prosthetic leg, even a prosthetic eye. So he's no longer employed by the FBI, and meanwhile he's a husband and father, and they're even adopting children, so he's a really good family man. Well, a crime happens in the very first book, and the FBI asks him to help solve the crime because he has a special skill that he can walk into a crime scene and he can see in his mind's eye everything that happened from beginning to end, and it's like a play in his head. So when he sees these crime scenes, he can help them to solve the crimes. So that was the first book, City of Windows. And then the second book, Under Pressure, was a bombing. A huge bombing had taken place. And when this had taken place, they were trying to figure out where was the large amount of people that died collateral damage, and was it just one person that was a target. So they not only had to try to ascertain that, but they also had to try to make sure to stay one step ahead of the bombers so that more bombs wouldn't go off. So he was part of that as well, and it put a lot of pressure on his wife and his family because his wife was concerned for his safety. So those were 2 good books, and those would be my standout books for the second week. I also read 3 Own Voices books in that second week of August, and they were Wild Rain by Beverly Jenkins, which was kind of like a historical romance because it took place earlier in the last century. And then How to Catch a Queen and When No One Was Watching by Alyssa Cole. Now, How to Catch a Queen was a romance, and then When No One Was Watching was a mystery thriller. So I love the fact that she writes romances, she writes science fiction, she writes mystery thriller. So she's a very, very talented Black author. Okay, I may look a little bit different because one of my cats decided that he had to leave the office right now this minute, or else he was going to scratch the door down. So I was about to tell you about a book that I read called Invisible Girl by Lisa Jewell. And the girl in this book was discharged by her therapist. He tells her that she was fixed, and in her mind's eye she was nowhere near fixed, so she begins to stalk him because she wasn't ready to let him go. And it's called Invisible Girl because she was very good at keeping herself unseen, or at least that's what she thought, because then she disappears, and the last person to see her alive was a high school teacher who had already suspicions about his character there were already suspicions about his nature and how he was around young women. So he was accused of the crime, and as it turns out, there had to be a tie-in between the girl, the man that was accused of her disappearance, and the therapist. So that was a really good book by Lisa Jewell. I had to stop myself because I think I was about to tell you a spoiler, and I don't want to do that. And then I read a book by Jodi Picoult called My Sister's Keeper. I needed this book for a good book, terrible movie, and it was a really good book about a girl who her parents had her simply so that she could be a donor of any sort for her sister who had some type of childhood cancer. I don't know if it was leukemia or not. And she was pretty much tired of being a human pincushion, and that's what that book was. And it was a very, very sensitive, ethical type of book. And those are my highlights for the second week. So let's talk about the third week. And yes, I'm using notes because we're talking 65 books. The third week I read was 13 books, so it was less books than the previous 2 weeks. And I remember this week particularly because I had a fibromyalgia flare hit me, and I pretty much slept 2 days straight. So I didn't read as many books in that third week, and that was 2 audiobooks and 11 ebooks. The audiobooks were The Secret Garden, which is a child's classic from I think 1910, and NetGalley, the review site that I use, had it for audio review, and it will be released in that format, in that performance on September 10th. And the other audio book that I listened to was No Easy Target by Iris Johansen. And I read No Easy Target because I had Chaos, and again, I have the hardcover book in the other room. I need to bring my books in here when I do these wrap-ups because I do a mix of print and ebooks. But I did read Chaos on my Kindle. In any event, Chaos had a new character, different from some of the other series that Iris Johansen does, because she has the Kendra Michaels, the Eve Duncan, and the Catherine Ling. That's why I said Catherine a few minutes ago. So she has those series. Well, Chaos has a new character that's not in those other 3 series. And I'm stumbling because I want to tell you something. Margaret Dawson is a character that's in Chaos. So the reason that I read No Easy Target is because Margaret Dawson was featured in Chaos. And so when I was reading the blurb for Chaos, I saw Margaret Dawson's name, and I'm like, wait, I know her. She's a horse whisperer. She works with dogs too. And I checked, and she was in at least 5 of the other series that Iris Johansen wrote. So that's why I wanted to read both of those books. And those were pretty much my highlights for that week. I mean, I read other good ones like When I Was You. Oh my word, it was a cross between the book You and the movie Fatal Attraction, because a woman who discovered that there was a younger woman in her town with the same name, she decided to take over that woman's life. So that was a good book too. And I read a couple of Mary Balogh books. So I always get some good reads in every single week. And then the last week of the month, which is what I'm trying to determine now, should I do a weekly wrap-up for the last week and then a monthly wrap-up right after that? I have to think about that. So for right now, I'll tie that in with this video, and I'll decide at the end of September if I will actually do a week 4 video on its own. So that week was 17 books. So my reading went up because I wasn't in flare. So as you heard earlier, the third week was 12 books, but 13 books actually, I'm sorry. And then the last week of the month was 17 books. And from those 17 books, there were 6 audiobooks and 11 ebooks. Now, earlier I stumbled over the J.D. Robb books because I had listened to 4, and the 2 that I listened to were Echoes in Death, and I can't see. I'm sorry, my Apprentice in Death. It's very hard for me to see. I just have really bad eyesight. So Apprentice in Death and Echoes in Death. Excellent books, and I'm getting very close to the end of the series, which is really good because I have the newest books, the September 8th release, which is next week, and the February 2021 release just waiting for me on my Kindle. I also read Thick as Thieves. Now this is another print book that's in the other room. Bad habit, Robin. And this was a Sandra Brown book. Really good book. It was actually one of her better books, I think. And then I read a book. I think, did I read two? Yes, I read two books by Colleen Coble. One was One Little Lie and Two Reasons to Run. And this was a really good book because it was about a woman who had escaped a cult. She had done really good, and then she was assigned a job as interim police chief because her father had to step down. And even though she had left the cult all those years ago, something is going on, and it brings in her life full circle. And those two books were really good. The only problem that I had was the first book ended on a cliffhanger, which was fine because I had the second book right there. Well, the second book ended on a cliffhanger, but I won't have that one for a few months. So that's my only problem with that. But other than that, it was a really good book. I snuck in another Janet Ivanovich book because like I said, I really want to read more of these. So I read Three to Get Deadly. And that was really good. It might not be deadly. I'm going to have to, yeah, it is Three to Get Deadly. I think I'm going to have to print the names of the books next time because I can't see through the screenshots. But some of the titles are coming back anyway. Other books that that stood out during that last week were 3 A.J. Pine books: Cowboy to the Rescue, My One and Only Cowboy, and Make Mine a Cowboy. Very good cowboy romances with an edge of sensitivity in each of them. The second one in particular dealt with kind of a very serious issue with one of the characters, and so I really liked the edge that those books had. Let's see, I also I know I got a new Faye Kellerman book for review. I think it comes out January or February. Well, it's part of her Decker Lazarus series, Peter Decker, Rena Lazarus series. So I checked my Audible account, and I think I read 8 so far, but I had 5 that I had bought from Audible years ago that I never listened to. So I will listen to all 5 of those, and then I will purchase the next however many there are, so that by the time the new book is almost ready to come out, I will be completely caught up with the series, because I used to love the series. Well, anyway, so the book that I chose to listen to this last week of August was Prayers for the Dead, and I think that's book number 9, and it was a really good book about a doctor who had been murdered. And so in most murder cases, the police always looks at the people closest to the victim. So in this case, the man had 6 adult children. So the police were looking at each of the children. And one of them, Brim, a priest, had a connection with Peter Decker. Peter Decker, by the way, is a police lieutenant. And it was his case that he was working on. Well, his wife, Rena, R-I-N-A, Rena Lazarus, had a connection with one of the adult children of the man that was killed. And the man's name is Brim, and he was a priest. And so Decker has to figure out, what does Rena have to do with the priest? How will this affect his investigation? Is it getting too close to home? Would it skew his opinions? And it was just a really good book to jump back into a series that I haven't listened to or read in maybe 4 or 5 years. So it was a really good book. I already have the very next book in my TBR for the end of next week. And I guess those are my highlights. Let me look at my screenshots really quick just to see if there's any more highlights I'd like to tell you about for that 4th week. No. I could basically tell you about A Year at Appleyard Farm. I thought that was really good. Very sensitive book that was previously written as 4 stories. And so the way the book was reproduced, or however they redid it, it was labeled summer let's see, summer, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and that, or it started at winter, but anyway, 4 seasons. And so I'm not going to try to call it 4 seasons because I'm going to stumble. So A Year at Appleyard Farm, I do want to mention that one because that really was a good book. And so that's basically my wrap up for the month. I always enjoy joining Facebook challenge groups each month, and I have joined 8 or so, I think at least 8 for the month of September. So I worked on my spreadsheet to get everything in order, and I've already read my first book, and now I'm halfway through my second book of the month. The first book was 880 pages, so there definitely wasn't 2 books read yesterday. And I think that's about it. That's my wrap up for the month of August. I will edit this video and get it up in a day or so, but I want to thank you for all your attention and time and watching me, and I will be back with more. Bye bye.